Welcome to today's explainer. When looking through today's source material on the architecture of internal fulfillment, it honestly completely reframed a paradox I think we all struggle with. Why do we so often find ourselves staring blankly at our screens, feeling completely uninspired, even though we literally have the entire world at our fingertips? If you've ever felt that lingering sense of emptiness despite having everything right in front of you, well, this structured look at our emotional architecture is going to make a whole lot of sense.
So let's dive right in and confront this head on. Why do we actually still get bored? It's a pretty profound question when you stop and think about it. We live in a world overflowing with endless entertainment, unlimited stimuli, more streaming services than any of us know what to do with, and yet we still end up scrolling for 40 minutes just to sigh and turn off the TV. As the source material reveals, the answer definitely isn't a lack of options. Actually, the answer lies in where we're sourcing our engagement from. We're looking in the wrong direction, and it's creating this massive vulnerability in our day-to-day lives.
Let's jump into Section 1, the external trap, or relying on the outside.
The text hits on the core problem right out of the gate. Boredom strikes when you are putting the control of your life on external factors. I want you to really focus on that word, control. When your primary source of joy comes from outside of yourself, you're actively surrendering your autonomy. You are handing the keys to your emotional state over to things that you have absolutely zero say over. And when you give up that control, you inadvertently create a baseline for chronic boredom. You're essentially just waiting around for the world to entertain you rather than generating your own momentum. Our source maps out exactly why relying on the outside fails us so consistently. Just think about food. The satisfaction inherently fluctuates. We've all opened the fridge 5 times expecting new food to magically appear, right? It's incredibly short-lived. Or when we turn to online content, the satisfaction there is completely uncertain. Sometimes it's a hit, but usually it's just a mindless scroll. And when we look to the news to feel engaged, we're tying our emotions to a source that just keeps changing, often in really chaotic ways. Relying on these external sources is literally like trying to build a house on a fault line. The foundation is just inherently unstable.
And this brings us to a concept the text calls external excitement. It defines this as a temporary state of joy that wildly fluctuates depending entirely on what you are currently consuming. Notice that heavy emphasis on the word consuming. This is the classic roller coaster effect. You consume something, a piece of breaking news, a sugary snack, a viral video, and boom, you get a spike of joy. But because that joy is dependent entirely on consumption, it absolutely cannot last. The second the consumption stops, the excitement crashes, and you're dropped right back into the exact boredom you were trying to escape in the first place.
We usually think that seeking instant satisfaction and immediate pleasure is the ultimate cure for boredom. But the reality drawn from the source is the exact opposite. The constant pursuit of that quick fix is actually the very thing generating your chronic boredom. By constantly feeding that need for a fast external hit, you're literally training your brain to become bored the absolute second the external stimulation stops.
Moving on to Section 2, the internal engine and taking back control.
The source provides this really clear, structured blueprint for building a self-sustaining internal engine. First, you must derive your energy internally. Second, you need to focus on things you actually have control over. And third, you need to work for the things you genuinely love. When you combine these 3 elements, you effectively immunize yourself against the unpredictability of the outside world. You aren't waiting for a social media feed to give you energy anymore. You're generating that energy yourself through active, intentional engagement with things that actually matter to you.
When you contrast that exhausting, fluctuating external excitement with consistent internal energy, the difference is just night and day. That external hit is inherently uncertain, and it never stops changing. But consistent internal energy, that's derived from things you love and work on, which means it remains firmly under your control. It provides this profound sense of stability. You aren't being tossed around by the waves of external stimuli anymore. You're steering your own ship with a steady, reliable engine.
Which brings us to Section 3, embracing the journey as the ultimate cure for boredom.
The text makes a remarkably simple yet incredibly powerful statement here. It says you feel less bored if you enjoy the process of working on something that you love. This is your core defense against the emptiness we discussed earlier. It's not about the quick hit of joy, it's about finding fulfillment in the actual daily work. When you trade the desire for immediate gratification for a deep, engaged appreciation of the process itself, boredom simply cannot take root. The act of doing becomes the reward.
Making this mental transition really requires 3 actionable steps to shift from a passive consumer mindset over to an engaged creator mindset. Step 1. You have to cut the cord and stop depending on immediate pleasure. Step 2, you've got to identify and find work you love that stays within your sphere of control. And step 3, you must relentlessly focus on the journey itself. It is a complete rewiring of how you approach your daily life and where exactly you seek your fulfillment.
Now, it's so incredibly easy to fall into the trap of fixating on the end goal, isn't it? If you're only working to get to the finish line, every single moment spent not at the finish line just feels tedious. It feels boring. But when you shift to focusing on the journey, the entire dynamic flips. The text makes it crystal clear that obsessing over the end goal causes us to completely miss the fulfillment hidden right there within the process of the work itself. The journey is where actual life happens.
The source distills this perfectly with this quote: "Focus on the journey rather than the end goal." True, lasting motivation requires a complete reorientation. You basically have to turn your back on the endless pursuit of external finish lines, whether that's reaching the bottom of a news feed or finishing a massive project, and turn your face toward the daily, internal process. That right there is where sustainable joy is architected. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final, provocative question to chew on. What journey are you rushing to finish? Are you relying on the external world to hand you a quick fix of excitement, or are you actively building an internal engine through work that you love? I challenge you to look at your own daily routines, spot where you might be surrendering your control to the outside world, and rethink the true source of your boredom. Thanks so much for exploring these concepts with me, and I really hope this helps you build a much stronger, self-sustaining architecture for your own fulfillment.